People talk about corporate espionage like it's some spy movie. A shadowy figure in a trench coat, stealing secrets in the dead of night. But what happens when the spy shares your last name? What happens when he's eaten at your mother's dinner table every Sunday for 30 years and has been quietly, methodically plotting your downfall since you were both just kids fighting over a video game controller in the basement? My name is Alex, and I'm 38 years old. For the last 10 years, my life has been a company I built from the ground up. From a single, rusty coffee roaster in my garage into a brand people across the country love. We're called Pioneer Roast. And it was more than a business to me. It was my heart, my soul, my sweat, and every sleepless night poured into a single, focused dream. I thought my family was proud. I thought my younger brother, Leo, was my biggest supporter. But I was wrong. Terribly, devastatingly wrong. His support was a mask, and behind it was a jealousy, so corrosive, so deeply rooted, it almost burned my entire world to the ground. Leo and I were always competitive. I'm 2 years older, and from the moment he could walk, it felt like he was chasing me, trying to beat me at everything. I remember it so clearly now, seeing it through the lens of betrayal. The year I was 12, I won the middle school science fair. My project was a clumsy, but functional, potato-powered clock. I got a blue ribbon and a handshake from the principal. I was beaming. I came home, and Leo, who was 10, was waiting in the kitchen. He didn't say congratulations. He just looked at my ribbon and said, "It's not even a real clock. It doesn't even have an alarm." It was always like that. If I got a B on a test, he'd work his tail off for a B+, and then leave his paper on the kitchen counter for everyone to see. If I was the top scorer on our high school basketball team, he'd spend the entire summer practicing, not just to be good, but to specifically outscore me the next season. I always saw it as normal brother stuff, a rivalry that pushed us both to be better. I never once thought it was coming from a dark, envious place. I thought he was trying to keep up. I never realized he was trying to tear me down, piece by painful piece. I was his benchmark for success, and he hated me for it. After college, our paths diverged dramatically. I took a huge risk, a terrifying leap of faith. I cashed in what little savings I had, took out a loan that felt like an anchor around my neck, and started Pioneer Roast. The first few years were brutal. A relentless grind of 70-hour weeks, living on cheap ramen and caffeine, pouring every ounce of my energy into the business. There were days I was so tired, I'd fall asleep on a stack of coffee sacks in the garage. Meanwhile, Leo took the safe route. He got a cushy job in the finance department of a massive corporation. A steady paycheck, great benefits, a clear, predictable corporate ladder to climb. He seemed happy, and he seemed incredibly supportive of me. "Big brother, the dreamer," he'd say, with a loud laugh at family gatherings. While I'm stuck in a cubicle, pushing papers, you're out there changing the world, one coffee bean at a time. He would raise his glass to me, and my parents would beam with pride. It sounded like a compliment, a loving jab from a proud younger brother. But now, looking back, I can hear the subtle, sarcastic edge in his voice. The little digs I was too naive and too exhausted to see. He was always offering helpful advice. Advice that, in hindsight, was laced with a slow-acting poison. When I was trying to secure my first round of funding, he offered to look over my business plan. He came back with a sea of red ink. "Alex, this is great, but are you sure you're ready for this? Your projections seem wildly optimistic. Banks will laugh at this. Maybe you should scale it back. Think smaller. Don't overextend yourself." He wasn't trying to help me avoid risk. He was trying to plant a seed of doubt, to make me play small, because my big dreams made his safe gray reality feel completely inadequate. I ignored him, and I got the funding. Pioneer Roast started to grow, slowly at first, a tiny ripple in a huge pond. Then all at once, we got a write-up in a major food magazine. We landed a distribution deal with a high-end grocery chain. Success was finally happening, and that's when his jealousy metastasized into active sabotage. It started in a way that was almost impossible to detect. He'd offered to help me set up my initial accounting and inventory software. "It's what I do, man," he'd said. "Let me save you a few bucks." He spent a weekend getting it all running. It seemed perfect, but about 6 months later, we started having problems, small at first. A shipment of beans would be logged incorrectly. Payroll numbers would be off by a few $100s. Minor headaches that I attributed to growing pains. But the glitches became more frequent. One time, the system showed we had 500 pounds of a specific Ethiopian bean when we actually had none, which led to us taking on orders we couldn't fill. It made us look incompetent and unreliable. I ended up scrapping the whole system and paying a fortune for a professional service to come in and replace it. The consultant who did the migration told me the initial setup was a mess. "It's like it was designed to fail in small, unpredictable ways," he'd remarked. At the time, I just thought Leo had done a bad job. I never imagined he'd done a perfect job of making me look like a fool. The first tangible sign of undeniable sabotage was an email. I was in the final stages of a deal with a chain of boutique hotels. A huge, company-making contract that would have secured our future. Leo, with his finance background, had again offered to review the final contract for me. "Just to make sure they're not trying to pull a fast one on you, big bro," he'd said, with that familiar trustworthy wink. He sent me back the document with a few minor notes. But the night before I was supposed to sign, the hotel's procurement officer emailed me, and he was furious. His email was ice cold. He said my final revision had tried to change the payment terms to be almost entirely in my favor, while also adding clauses that shifted all liability to them. An insulting, amateur move that made me look greedy, arrogant, and untrustworthy. He pulled the offer. The deal was dead. A multi-million-dollar opportunity, gone in an instant. I was stunned, breathless. I looked at the version of the document on my sent folder, and he was right. The terms were completely different from what I had approved. I called Leo, my voice shaking with panic. "Oh my God, Alex, that's terrible," he said, his voice dripping with perfectly rehearsed sympathy. "I have no idea how that could have happened. It must have been some kind of software glitch. A corrupted file or something. That's the danger of these free email services. I'm so sorry, man." A corrupted file. It sounded plausible. I wanted to believe him. I couldn't even fathom the alternative. That my own brother, my own blood, would deliberately sabotage my biggest deal to date. So I let it go. I wrote it off as a one-in-a-million tech error. A painful, expensive, but ultimately random piece of bad luck. But it wasn't bad luck. It was a declaration of war. I just hadn't realized it yet. After the hotel deal fell through, things started to get weird. A string of strange, inexplicable problems began to plague the business. It was like a death by 1,000 cuts. And I couldn't find the source of the bleeding. It started with our social media. Out of nowhere, our comments sections were flooded with negativity. Hateful, aggressive comments. And dozens of fake one-star reviews started popping up everywhere. They were specific. Too specific to be random trolls. They'd mention things like inconsistent roast profiles on the new Sumatran blend or unethical sourcing practices in their Colombian supply chain. These were baseless, outrageous lies. But they were worded with industry jargon that sounded credible to the average customer. Our online reputation, which I had spent years building, was being systematically dismantled overnight. I hired a freelance IT security expert, a guy named Ben, to look into it. I just assumed it was a ruthless competitor. What he found was far more chilling. Ben was a genius, a digital bloodhound. He first noticed that the language in all the negative reviews was strangely similar, as if written by the same person, trying to sound like different people. He then uncovered a network of dozens of fake social media accounts, all created within the same week, that were driving the attacks. He explained that it was a classic smear campaign. And then he dropped the bombshell. He traced the activity. The fake accounts, the bot-like comments, the review bombings. They were all originating from a small cluster of IP addresses, all within the same suburban neighborhood. The neighborhood where Leo lived. My blood ran cold when he told me. It was circumstantial, sure, but the knot of ice in my stomach told me it was true. Still, I couldn't confront him with just that. I needed something concrete, something undeniable. And then came the suggestion that almost ruined me for good. I was struggling to keep up with our growth. Our current shipping partner was getting expensive, and we'd had a few issues with late deliveries. Leo came to me one Sunday dinner, his face a perfect mask of concern and helpfulness. "Alex, I was thinking about your shipping problem," he said, passing the mashed potatoes. "There's this new logistics company, SwiftEdge Logistics. They're all over the finance blogs. Super aggressive pricing, amazing tech-focused platform. They could save you a fortune. You should really look into them." It sounded perfect, the exact lifeline I needed. I did my research, and on the surface, they looked legitimate. A slick website, glowing testimonials. I was so desperate for a solution that I ignored the gnawing feeling of suspicion in my gut. I signed a 6-month exclusive contract with SwiftEdge. It was the single worst business decision of my life. The first month was a catastrophe. Orders were lost in transit. Packages arrived weeks late, if they arrived at all. Coffee bags were showing up damaged, torn open, looking like they'd been run over by a truck. We were bleeding customers. The angry emails and phone calls were a relentless tsunami of fury. Our customer service team was completely overwhelmed. I was working around the clock, not building my business, but desperately trying to put out fire after fire. My life's work crumbling into ash around me. I tried to get out of the contract, but it was ironclad. A legal trap designed to lock you in. I had to hire a lawyer just to negotiate an exit, which cost me a fortune I couldn't afford. When I finally did some deeper digging into SwiftEdge, I found out the truth. They were a notoriously unreliable company. A pariah in the logistics world, known for undercutting competitors with lowball offers and then providing horrific, business-killing service. A company you'd only recommend to someone whose business you wanted to see burn to the ground. And that's when all the pieces clicked into place with a sickening finality. The glitched accounting software. The corrupted contract file. The online attacks. From his neighborhood, the helpful recommendation that was actually a poison pill. It was him. It had always been him. I felt a wave of nausea, so intense I had to sit down on the floor of my office. This wasn't a business problem. This was a betrayal, so deep, so personal, it felt like a part of my soul had been carved out with a rusty knife. The brother I had loved, the brother I had trusted, had been actively trying to destroy the most important thing in my life. Not because of anything I'd done to him, but simply because I was succeeding and he was not. I knew I had to confront him, but it couldn't be my word against his. I called Ben back and paid him to do one last thing. A deep dive on the IP address from Leo's house. I needed irrefutable proof. 2 days later, he sent me a file. It was a screen recording of him using network forensics tools to link the specific device that created the fake accounts, a desktop computer, to the Wi-Fi network registered at Leo's home address. It was the digital smoking gun. I called my parents and asked them to come over for dinner. I told them it was important, that we needed to talk as a family. My voice was eerily calm. My mom sounded worried. "Is everything all right, Alex?" she asked. "Everything will be," I replied. And then I called Leo, and I invited him too. He walked in that night with a bottle of wine, smiling. That same old, supportive, charming mask firmly in place. "Hey, big brother," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Smells great in here. What's the occasion?" "Sit down, Leo," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. We sat at the dining room table, my mom and dad, looking back and forth between us, confused and anxious. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just reached into my briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. I slid it across the table to him. "What's this?" he asked, his smile faltering as he saw the serious look on my face. "That," I said, my eyes boring into his, "is the IT report from a security consultant I hired. It traces the hundreds of fake negative reviews and social media attacks against my company back to a network of accounts, all originating from your neighborhood. Quite a few of them, in fact, from an IP address registered to your house." He opened the folder. His face went pale as he flipped through the pages. The charts, the data, the undeniable proof. He started to stammer, looking at our parents with wide, innocent eyes. This is crazy. You're being paranoid, Alex. This is ridiculous. You're probably just stressed from work, blaming me." "Am I stressed, Leo?" I cut him off, my voice rising, sharp as broken glass. "Or was I stressed when our multi-million-dollar hotel contract was mysteriously sabotaged with altered payment terms right after you were the last person to touch the file? Was I stressed when I signed a 6-month exclusive contract with a shipping company that you personally recommended? A company that has a public reputation for being a business killer and almost put me into bankruptcy." My parents were staring, horrified. My mom had her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. My dad just looked at Leo with an expression of pure, crushing disappointment. And that's when the mask, the lie he had worn for 30 years, finally shattered. Leo's face twisted, the fake concern replaced by years of raw, ugly, undiluted resentment. "You have no idea what it's like," he finally spat, his voice shaking with a rage that was shocking in its intensity. "To be me, to be your brother. Everything was always so easy for you, Alex. The golden boy, mom and dad's favorite. You got the talent, the charisma. You just snap your fingers, and a successful business appears out of thin air." "Easy," I said, my voice a low growl. "You think any of this was easy? I worked myself to the bone while you were climbing your little corporate ladder. I risked every penny I had. I slept in my garage. Don't you dare tell me this was easy." "And they loved you for it," he screamed, pointing a shaking finger at our parents, tears of self-pity welling in his eyes. "All they ever talk about is you. Alex's business. Alex's success. Do you know what that feels like? To sit here every Sunday and listen to them praise you, while I'm just the boring one, the safe one, the footnote? You don't deserve this, Alex. You never did." And there it was. The sickening, pathetic truth. It wasn't about business. It wasn't about money. It was a lifetime of jealousy that had curdled into pure hatred. He didn't want me to fail because he was cruel. He wanted me to fail so he could finally feel like he wasn't living in my shadow. My mom was openly sobbing now, whispering, "No, Leo, no." My dad just shook his head and got up from the table, unable to even look at his own son. "I can't," was all he said before walking out of the room. I cut Leo out of my life that night, and out of my business. It cost me thousands more to repair the damage he'd done, to my company's reputation and to my own peace of mind. Our family is broken. Holidays are a tense, awkward nightmare of unspoken words and deep wounds. My parents are caught in the middle of a war they never wanted. Sometimes the best revenge is simply to survive, to refuse to be destroyed. Pioneer Roast is doing better than ever now. We're stronger. I'm stronger. But there's a scar on my heart that will never fade. a constant reminder that the deepest betrayals don't come from your enemies. They come from the people who are supposed to love you the most. I won, but God, what I lost in the process. Here's my wish to everyone. May you find your Leo before they destroy something important to you. It doesn't have to be your brother. It doesn't have to be your friend. It might be some random person on the road to your big destiny.